Paul, you're going to explain to me, speaking of pickups, because I don't really know anything about this kind of stuff. So you're going to give me a little lesson here in pickups.
That would be a joy. I'd like that. I've never worked harder on anything with the guitars and the pickups. Reverse engineering, what was magic about the old ones, it took a long, long time, and I had a lot of help, including the grandson of the person that made all the wire for Fender and Gibson during the 50s and early 60s. He's helped me, and a lot of electrical engineering help, a lot of magnet manufacturing help. There's been a lot of help. You want to just start from scratch?
Yeah, start from scratch.
All right, so if you take a magnet,
yep,
and there's a string vibrating on top of it, the magnetic field moves with the string. Okay. When you then stick a coil around the magnet, this is plus and this is minus. I mean, this is minus, so it's ground.
Okay.
This change in magnetic field induces a signal into the wire. That makes sense, right?
Yep.
And if I put a piece of fiberboard here and a piece of fiberboard here, you got a Strat pickup.
Okay.
It's not actually that complicated.
All right.
When they made a P90,
yep,
which is fascinating,
yep,
you had a thing and a thing and a screw, and you put a magnet here and a magnet here. This was north, this was north, this is south, and the magnetic field would go around this way. Whereas in this one, the magnetic field's just jumping through the air. Same thing on the P90s, jumping through the air. This had about 10,000 turns, all right? When they made a humbucking at Gibson, they just said, oh, well, we'll just put 5,000 on each one, on each coil, and it's basically going to be a hum-canceling P90. That's the way it was set up originally.
Okay.
Which, that's the rumor, but it checks out.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so now they're going to do a humbucking pickup.
Okay.
Ted McCarty told me he asked his electrical engineer,
all right, to
get a pickup that bucked the hum. That's where humbucking came from.
Okay.
He said that at our pickup bench. We went, that's where the word humbucking come from. We didn't know, right?
Yep.
And his engineer was a guy named Seth Lover. Okay,
yeah.
So what they did was they made two coils. One has a slug in it and the other one has a screw in it, and there's a magnet in between. It looks like two P90s if you put another magnet over here, okay? And what they did was they made this north and they made this south.
Okay.
So when this noise comes in from the outside, it injects the signal in the same direction. But because this one's magnetically backwards, it's ejecting the signal in the other direction. And so you wire this one backwards and the noise hits each other and cancels.
I'd like to take a second to talk to you about this channel. This is actually Rick Beato 2. I've had it since the beginning of my main channel, and many of you are not subscribed. As a matter of fact, 87% of the people that watch this channel regularly are not subscribed. So I encourage you to hit the subscribe button on this channel and on my main channel. This will help me get even more of my dream guests and help continue to grow both channels. Thank you.
That's how it works.
Okay.
Which is fascinating because this one is the opposite magnetically than this one. All right. Then Seth Lover stuck a cover on it, which is the same thing as in a mic pre in a console. He put it in a mu metal can to stop the electrical noise, which is what's in every mic pre.
Right.
You don't just put the coil in there. Everyone you've seen has been in a can.
That's right.
So he stuck it in a can, which was great. Except the can is stopping some of the string that's vibrating from going in.
Right.
So that what the cover's made out of and how thick it is makes a huge difference. The best example of that is the pickup on a Tele, on the bass pickup. That cover is so thick, the pickup doesn't really have any volume or high end. If you take those metal covers off, instantly the pickup sounds better. I mean, people were so upset with the pickup sound of the bass pickup in a Telecaster. They were putting humbuckings in, baby humbuckings in. They would change it. They'd leave the treble pickup alone.
And you just need to take the cover off.
You need to take the cover
Which
off.
I don't ever see anybody do that.
I've never seen anybody do it, but I've done it, and it's way louder.
Okay.
The cover's decimating the sound of the, because it's stopping the...
Okay, is this why guitar players started taking the covers off their pickups then?
Well, they got louder and they got brighter.
Okay.
So, because when you take the cover off, it's a form of a capacitor. It's literally reducing the high end and reducing the volume a little bit. When you take the cover off, it's louder.
What about the whines with it? More whines is
It's
good?
more power.
More whines is more power. Is louder.
It's louder, but you can go too far or too low. It's almost like food at the table. You can give somebody too little food or way too much food. You got to have the right amount on the plate.
Okay.
You got to have the right amount of turns. But this is what happens. When you whine, one of the first ones I drew, which was a magnet with a coil on it,
Yep.
it does something like this. Now this would be amplitude, and this is frequency.
Okay.
It literally rings like the EQs in there. The way those old Neves are made is they had an inductor ringing at a note, and you could add or take away the ringing. A Strat pickup is ringing. You can hear that ping in every note you play.
Right.
The thing that's making that ping is the pickup.
Okay.
Okay, so when you put a 1 meg pot on it, the high end hurts your ears. So you put a 500K pot on it, it calms it down a little bit. If you put a 250K pot on it, it calms it down even more. It's taking the ring note down in volume.
Got it.
All right, so we came out with a thing called TCI where you would take and tune the one coil and tune the other coil so that when you were done in the NF pickups and those single coils,
Yep.
we were looking for 10.2K
Okay.
at about 10 dB high. So you wanted to go up about 10 dB and come down. So what we did was we made the coils so that when you put them together, it did the same thing, which is why it was tuned to the same note.
Got it.
And because it wasn't quite as high, I put a 500K pot in it so that it didn't calm down what was already calmed down. Because I'm driving one coil into the other, right? So this is what Leo Fender did that was genius. He figured out you can make a humbucking that sounds like a single coil. If you think about a jazz bass, you got 2 pickups, right?
Yep.
If you turn them both on full, it's a humbucking. This is north and this is south.
Okay.
Okay, a P bass.
Yep.
You said you had an old one here that your uncle
do.
had or something, right?
Yeah.
You got one, and then the other one is sitting here. I'm sorry, I'm not the best drawer on the planet, but you get the general idea, right?
Yep.
This one's north, this one's south. It goes in here, it goes in here, comes out, it's in humbucking. P-bass is a humbucking pickup, but it's not, so now he's made a jazz bass and a P-bass, and they're both humbuckings, but they sound like single coils, which is the proof that you could make a humbucking pickup that would sound like a single coil. A P-bass is in series.
Okay.
A jazz bass is in parallel. Doesn't really matter whether you do one or the other,
Because
except for the
that
volume.
won't change. That won't change.
It changes the frequency response and the volume, but it's still a humbucking.
Got it.
Now, in a Strat,
Yep.
this is north, this is south, this is north. You put it in the in-between position, no noise. It's a humbucking.
Right.
So if that's true, I should be able to make those pickups in an NF, which is 2 coils that are ringing at exactly the note that I measured and exactly at the height I measured, and you have yourself a humbucking pickup. That thing makes no noise. I mean, it's dead silent.
Paul, do you do this stuff with? Do you just do it by ear, or do you do it with an oscilloscope? How do you do it?
We have a machine
that measures this.
We have a machine, and we just did a video that is going to show everybody. I don't know when it'll come out, but we have a machine that absolutely tells us exactly what it's going to sound like. And all these pickups and all these guitars that we did the video today, I've put in the machine. I know exactly what note they rang out. I know how loud the ring note was at and exactly where it was. So let me tell you something. If you have one that does this and you have one that's slightly lower, look how all the high end that's missing.
Right.
Just moving this down in frequency changes, it adds more low mid-range, it takes high mid-range away. Just barely moving the resonant frequency really changes the sound of the pickup.
But what about things like the actual magnets? Are the metals different now than they were back in the 50s or 60s? Does that
Yes
make a
and no.
difference? Okay.
If you take the new magnets and they burn it to find out what is in them,
Yep.
it's right about amount of metals. But the way they cool it and the way they make it changes it. You can buy 4 boxes of Alnico 2, all exactly supposedly the same, and they're not.
Okay.
You can buy 5 boxes of Alnico 5 from different manufacturers. Even though it says Alnico 5 on it, they all sound different. They all have a difference, and we use an American manufacturer for our U.S. pickups that, I mean, we're advertising American Alnico now, and it's going really well. And we found manufacturers for our SE guitars. I mean, I thought that those magnets sounded fine, but it's very complicated, not so easy. Look, you got the wire. The wire is about the diameter of the hair on your head, and the thickness of the coating makes a difference, and how all that makes a difference.
Okay.
How many turns makes a difference. How you layer it back and forth makes a difference. And you've heard about these hand-wound things.
What does that mean?
Well, they sat there by hand and went back and forth. At Gibson in the 50s, they were using George Stevens winding machines. You can count how many turns it was per layer.
Okay.
I asked Ted, I said, how many turns per layer? He goes, I don't know. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, it's pretty slow. Went back and forth pretty slow. He said, how many turns per layer? He says, I don't know, count it. Which I thought was a very grounded answer, right? So you've got the wire, you've got the layering, you've got the turns.
Wait, what's the layering? What is that?
How it goes back and forth.
Got it.
If
Okay.
somebody does it random by hand, it's going to be a different resonant peak than if they go really evenly back and forth. Then you've got the magnet type, the magnet strength.
Okay. Do magnets lose their strength over time?
Generally, the answer is yes, but it's
what's
very,
the
very,
time?
very slow.
Okay.
When they did Alnico 2, Alnico 3, Alnico 4, Alnico 5, what they were trying to do was not fix the guitar business. They were trying to get motors to not lose power over time.
Right, okay.
And when they got to 5, they figured out a way that the magnets held their strength for a much longer period of time. They all sound different, but they were cooled differently. They had different metallurgy in them, and they did something major in 5 to get them to not lose their strength. People go, well, in 55 they were using this. Well, I sent them off and found out what they were.
Okay.
That wasn't what as advertised.
Okay.
But it was fascinating to me. So if you have the magnet more powerful, the pickup gets louder, and the idea is that you lose harsh high end. That's not what our experience is. You lose volume. The harsh high end comes from other things, but that's a different story on a different day. Most of these old pickups are broken, and they have to be rewound the way you have to refret something. Same thing with
What do you do? Do you actually cut the to repair that, or to rewind it? Do you just cut the windings out, take them out, and then just rewind the pickup that way?
When you have a broken pickup, I know it sounds painful, but
Yeah.
you have to know how many turns were on it. You got to unwind it with a turns counter.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so
What is a turns counter? Is that a machine that counts
no, it's
the winding?
literally as it spins one time, the clicker goes 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
You're counting turns, right?
Okay.
And what happens is this. In the world of pickups, they say, well, I have a 7.8K PAF. That is a resistance of the wire.
Okay.
Okay, but nothing I drew on the board had to do with the resistance of the wire. It's a kind of indication of what gauge wire they used and how many turns they put on it.
Okay.
But everything, why my pickup's 8.2K. Well, they used to resharpen the dies, and the wire would get a little bigger, which would lower the resistance. They don't resharpen dies anymore. They don't resharpen CNC tools. But all these dies that I have that came out of the grandfather's workshop, a lot of them have been resharpened.
Interesting. Okay, so the Strat pickups that we were listening to have plastic covers on them versus when you're talking about a humbucker that has a metal cover to it. What is the difference between plastic and metal?
The metal has way, way, way more effect than plastic.
Okay.
Here's one for you. You're going to love this.
Okay.
You ever seen a tele pickup out of a Telecaster?
No.
Okay, there's a big copper plate on the bottom of the pickup.
Okay.
Have you ever heard about this metal on the bottom of a Telecaster?
I've probably seen Telecasters. I don't hang around in guitar repair shops very often, Paul.
Well, I lived in one and tried to run one. So what happens is there's a lot of turns on a Tele treble pickup.
Okay.
There's a lot of turns.
All right.
And they put a copper plate on the bottom of it so that you can have screw holes in it so you can adjust the height, the 3 screws that adjust the height.
Okay.
It turns out it's not a copper plate. It's a steel plate with copper plating, and they didn't put the nickel plating on. When you nickel plate something, the first thing you have to do is copper flash it, and then you nickel plate it. But they didn't want to pay for the nickel plating, so they just left the copper. It looks like a copper plate. It's not. It's magnetic. You're adding one huge piece of steel to the bottom of the pickup, and when you take it off, it sounds way more like an overwound Strat pickup.
Interesting.
I met little George once.
Okay.
And he got really mad at me.
Okay.
He goes, "Get away from me. You get away from me." I was like, what would I do wrong? What did I do wrong? He goes, "Every guitar I've ever owned that I loved has been stolen from me, and I'm going to love that. You get away from me." And he was dead serious. He had put a Tele treble pickup in all his Strats because he wanted the extra courage of the pickup. I thought that was fascinating, right? Because at the time you couldn't buy an overwound Seymour Duncan or DiMarzio treble pickup. That wasn't the way it was, right? But he was dropping these Tele treble pickups into his Strats, which I thought was brilliant. I mean, I'm sorry, glasses, when you're playing slide, what a guitar player.
Yeah.
So when that happened and he got mad at me, which I thought was actually a compliment because he had seen the guitar and he really liked it, Paul Barrere knelt down and handed me a stage pass and he goes, "Don't worry about it." And I put my chin on the stage at the Warner Theater and watched 5 geniuses go at it for 2 hours. It wells me up just to talk about it. It was unbelievable what the drummer was doing, what the bass player was playing, what the keyboard player was playing, what Lowell was singing and playing, and what the other guitar player was playing. It was just a bunch of geniuses. Little Feat was not subtle. This was powerful music. And I was the only one at the front of the stage at the Warner Theater with my chin on the stage because I had a stage pass. And Paul had done that for me. I just thought it was very sweet. But that was my thing. When a guitar was done, I was down at concerts showing them before I shipped the guitar to the thing because it was the only sample I had.
Right.
And for me, I didn't have P90s. I had to buy them out of the used bins. I didn't have humbuckings. I didn't have, I mean, the magnets. What I did know is I had a box of magnets, and every time I slid another magnet in the pickup, it sounded different. I said, "What's that about?" God, it took a long time to figure out and really understand. But, you know, I know why that 55 Strat in the video is quieter than the other ones. Those magnets aren't as strong as it is in the other one.
And it's because of time, or they just were not strong? The magnets that they had for the pickups at the time were not as strong?
No, they had not perfected as they went along. They got better and better and better at getting more magnetic strength out of them and holding better. It's the same kind of Alnico, but it wasn't as strong. You can fully charge it, even now. And it doesn't fully charge as much as, say, a 63 or 64 or 62. By then, they had it.
They had it nailed.
And they had it nailed, and it was full power. Then they went on to even stronger stuff like neodymium magnets and Alnico 8, and it didn't sound as good. It was a little harsh, so people backed off. But that magnet industry was not designed for the guitar industry. It was designed for the motor industry as much as I can figure out. And the other thing that I like about all this stuff was that I don't think they ordered Alnico 2, Alnico 3, Alnico 4 or 5. I think they ordered magnetic material, you know, 1/2 inch by 1/8 by 2.5. I think that's what it said on the
and just
purchase.
whatever came.
Whatever they were making for the motor industry at that point. That's what it looks like to me.
Wow.
I saw Rupert Neve once. He was he was in a forum. He says, "You guys and your sounds." He goes, "That's not why we did it that way. We did it that way so nobody at the BBC would be fired. If we lose a channel, the guy's fired because he's lost the mic on live TV." He says, "I was trying to get people not to be fired. It was about having it so robust it would never go down.
Right.
And you guys are all talking about tone. I was trying to keep people's jobs, which I thought was brilliant.
Paul, those Neve the transformers that they had back then,
Yeah.
why did those sound so good on the 1073s, 1084s, things like that? What do you think
Well,
about that?
it depends.
Paul loves gear as much as I do.
I love
Paul
gear.
loves all types of gear. Drums doesn't matter. Guitars are just one thing. But
Okay, in a transformer, it's the same thing.
Okay.
They ring.
yeah.
So what happens is they put a pod on it, just the same way. So if you have a transformer
Yep.
and it's ringing, all right, at a high note,
Yep.
if you put a resistor across the plus and the minus, if you put a resistor across the plus and the minus, it calms it down to be flat.
Okay.
Yeah, well, they were slugging the transformers in these old Neves to make sure that they had dead flat frequency response. They knew about all this stuff. This is electrical engineering transformer 101. But what's not understood is that transformers in mic pre's and pickups are kissing cousins in the same garden. They're ringing. And you want the Strat to ring, but not too much.
Right.
You don't want the mic pre transformer to ring because you're adding this high note you don't want. And then you've got laminations. You can use the nickel laminations or the steel lamination or this or that. Or that. We actually reverse engineered some old Marshall transformers, and we were stunned at what we found.
Okay, which is?
It wasn't the material in the laminations they're using now,
Okay.
and the winding scheme inside was genius. Eric Johnson and I bought a lot of Marshalls.
Right.
And we found what we thought was the best one. And I said to Eric, I'm going to reverse engineer it. He goes, no. He said, I'll never hear it again. That's the best transformer I've ever heard in a Marshall. I said, Eric, I don't want one. I want 100. I want 1,000. He goes, don't do it. And then finally, the phone hangs up. Next day he calls me, he says, what'd you find? Which I thought was great.
Of course.
Right? Well, because he was interested.
Right.
Really interested in me. In his world, he wants everything to be dead stock and vintage and all that stuff. And in my world,
You want to be able to.
I'm putting the screws in for the first time. I want to be able to do it over and over again.
Absolutely.
We live in a very interesting environment in which a lot of this stuff is so revered, but in my world, we're trying to measure exactly what it is. We're trying to measure the magnets to find out what
Yes.
they are, measure the wire, measure the frequency response. I mean, we have this way of going through the pickup, and it tells us what the frequency response of the pickup is before we ever plug it in. So we're guessing way, way less. We're not, in the dark, blind. We're actually being able to measure things. I'll tell you another story which is fascinating. I was showing John Mayer the Silver Sky prototype, and he plugs it in and he goes, well, I could turn the tone control down. In other words, it's too bright. And I had used the same magnets, same wire, same turns, same everything that everybody says on the internet is the right amount. I said, can I borrow the guitar for a day so I can put the pickup on the machine? He says, I can live with it on this tour. I can live with that at one day. I'm not sure Rene Martinez was real happy with me that day because I took his one tool to get the tones for that. But
Okay.
we put it in the gig bag, and my wife had a Prius, and I took the guitar and I threw it in the back of the Prius, and I said, don't get in a car accident. And we went home, and I put the pickup that Gravity was played on the machine, and my jaw dropped. I had never seen numbers like that in my whole life, and they weren't even close to what we had done. It had 6 dB more bass, the mid-range was better, the high-end wasn't harsh. I mean, I could see it on the screen. I was like, oh my God. And I started calling electrical engineers and telling them what I'd seen and asked them how we're gonna do it. And this one genius guy, he goes, until you duplicate exactly what it isn't going to be the same. You're not going to be able to imitate it. You're going to have to do it the same. So we had to get the magnets right. We had to get the waxing right. We had to get the turns right. We had to get the wire right. We had to get all that stuff right. And when we finally got it right, that's what John's using now. That whole last tour, Dead Company at the Sphere, was one of the best jam bands I'd ever witnessed. He has really worked hard to make that band extraordinary, and I thought it sounded beautiful. So pickups are an art form. as doing videos for the internet is an art form. You're good at it.
I always enjoy when we hang out, and especially when me and Tim hang out together. It's always fun.
Oh, man.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. And by the way, your crew did a great job. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, cool.